What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. It's my plays for week 5 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. More of a casual video here, just taking an early look, first glance at the entire slate, at pricing, matchups, game totals, things like that. Then after we have an entire week of looking at projections, ownership, running my optimizer, building lineups, and just gathering news, we'll do our core plays video, going in depth with that, and then on the optimizer for you all to see who is popping the most. And also, this happens to be your first time here. My name is Chris Pinnell, and I break down NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. So if you do end up enjoying today's content, or even if you don't, consider liking the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or mean to me in the comments, call me ugly, be rude, or be nice. That's always an option as well. Leave them down below, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. And as always, if you like what you see on the screen, it's available to you completely free for a week with Patreon's free week trials. Come in, check out all the extra content, projections, optimizer, ownership projections. I have the entire slate statted out for you. If you want to use that for props, be my guest. Cheat sheets, going over cash games, tournaments, my Discord community, and I do cover other sports as well. So if you want to come in, check it out completely free for a week. And if you like it after, you can stay. If not, tell me to kick rocks. I don't care either way, but I would like you to try it out. But getting into the quarterbacks here, this is a smaller slate overall, only 10 games. So ownership is going to be a bit more condensed compared to other weeks. And I will say there's just a few games that do stand out the most here. Now, we do kind of have a Coors Field game. For those of you that play MLB DFS, I'm sure you will understand the reference. But we have a 53.5 point over-under in this one with the Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings. And as you can see, we don't have many quarterbacks listed here. Again, smaller slate, but I did grab two from pretty much each section, but we do have one cheap quarterback with two up top, two in the middle. We have Stafford down low, but let's start up top with the man, Patrick Mahomes, $8,200 on DraftKings, $9,200 over on FanDuel. Going to be tough to avoid this game. The problem is a lot of these guys are pretty expensive, so it's going to make stacking a little bit difficult because if you go the Patrick Mahomes route, well, you're kind of forced in playing Travis Kelce because good luck guessing which wide receiver is going to go off. If you are playing 150 line or something like that, sure, you can take chances without stacking Mahomes and Kelce. But if you're building a single entry build or a 3-max, you're playing Mahomes, you're probably playing Mr. Taylor Swift over there. And then if you are playing Kirk Cousins, you pretty much have to play Justin Jefferson, and that's eating up a ton of salary, over $9,000 these days. T.J. Hawkinson's pretty expensive, so these are very pricey stacks. So when you are playing one of those two quarterbacks, just keep in mind what kind of roster construction you were getting forced with. But overall, as just general plays, I like these guys a lot. Should be a high-scoring game. And I love Vikings slates, or Vikings games really in general, especially when they're playing in Minnesota where they play their best football, Kirk Cousins at least, because their defense sucks, but their offense can put up a ton of points. And the Chiefs themselves, I mean, their defense isn't the absolute best thing in the world. Gave up some points to Zach Wilson and company last week, which I don't think we were expecting. Mahomes kind of sucked last week as well. It was the Isaiah Pacheco show, but should bounce back quite nicely here. So Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, I have definitely two of my favorite quarterbacks on the slate here, but you are getting a nice discount with Kirk, and it's a lot easier to do his stacks. I realize Justin Jefferson is insanely priced, but you do get that over $1,000 discount at the quarterback position there with Captain Kirk. Then if we just want to keep pairing these games together, we have Jalen Hurts facing off versus Matthew Stafford. Obviously, if you have the money, Hurts is the better play over Stafford, but this game actually looks pretty appealing. It's not going to have quite the luster of Vikings versus Chiefs, but this game has a 50.5 point over under, which is only 3 points off the 53.5 in KC and Minnesota. 27.5 implied team total here for the Eagles. 4.5 point spread on the road in LA. And both these guys look very viable, and I like the game stacks here quite a bit. Jalen Hurts, we know where the ball's going. It's going to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, sometimes Dallas Goedert. And then for Matthew Stafford, we definitely know the ball is going to Puka Nacua, sometimes Tutu Atwell. Van Jefferson is a ghost these days. And then Kyron Williams and Tyler Higbee. Although we might get Cooper Kupp back this week, he is in that 21-day window. I'm going to lean that he doesn't play, but honestly, I have no idea, so I'm not going to act like I do. But if he is back, obviously that does hurt pretty much everybody else in the passing game because Stafford loves his boy. Now, Puka, I don't think he's going to completely go away. You know, he's not going to get you 15, 20 targets, but he is still going to be a viable piece in that offense, although I think at his current price, which is close to $7K, if Kupp is back, they said they want around 80, 90% health. That would be kind of tough to pay without knowing exactly how the offense is going to shake out once Kupp returns, because Kupp is obviously going to be the alpha dog. But both these quarterbacks viable. It just completely depends on what you want to do with the rest of your lineup. Stafford's really cheap, and Philadelphia has given up some points to the quarterback position so far this year. I know it's a very small sample size, but through 4 weeks, they're 27th versus the quarterback position, only 280 passing yards per game and 2.25 passing touchdowns. Equates to 22.8 DraftKings points per game. And while Stafford, the touchdowns haven't been there at all, at some point they got to show up because he's throwing the ball nearly 40 times per game, over 300 passing yards per game, but only 0.75 passing touchdowns. So at some point, we're going to get some positive regression. And at $5,600 in a game that has potential to be a shootout and trailing at home in a dome, I think that makes a lot of sense for GPPs once again. And the last quarterback we have to talk about here is Tua at $7,100. I could see him getting a decent amount of ownership at this price point. When you look at the team total at 30.5, it's kind of simple as this. Dolphins good, Giants bad. They have looked absolutely dreadful most of the week so far this year. And Tua, he's been great this season. I mean, not really much not to like here. He just doesn't offer you any rushing upside, which sucks, but you don't really need it when you're getting 330 passing yards per game and over 2 passing touchdowns, over 9 yards per attempt. You got Tyreek Hill, you got Jalen Waddle. If you are rostering Tua, you have to roster at least one of those guys, preferably Tyreek Hill, but you can obviously do both. The only downside here is that the running backs always have the potential to go absolutely nuclear, but they use them in the passing game too, so it's not always going to be one or the other. But plenty of points should be scored here. Team with the highest implied team total, you get their quarterback for $1,000 less compared to guys like Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, and he has similar upside. All right, so moving over to our build, we talked about a handful of quarterbacks, but I'm going to roll with Tua here at $7,100, just like that Miami Dolphins offense a lot this week. The problem is I like the running backs for Miami as well, and we're going to obviously have a Tua passing attack stack here. But I still think we can actually play a running back from this team because I think they're just going to put up a ton of points, and they are using the passing game, so it's not a complete negative correlation there, but talk about that when we move on to running back. And speaking of, we have the ball carriers here, and as usual, we have a couple options up top, a lot in the middle, then we have one cheaper back that's below sub 6K. Not seeing any absolute free plays at the running back position this week, so don't think you can dumpster dive and find a 4K running back. I just don't think that's going to exist. But up top, we have the two big dogs, Bijan Robinson and Derrick Henry. If you're looking for volume, talented backs, and good spots, they are your guys, although Bijan does have a bit of a safer floor, considering his involvement in the passing game, which is close to around a 20% target share this season. Obviously, that's in an awful passing offense that barely throws the ball whatsoever. But if he's going to get you 15 plus carries on the ground, well, around 15 carries, he is averaging around 13 per game this year. And going to get you around a handful of targets. The floor is super safe, the talent's high, and the matchup is good. So not really much more you can ask for. Derrick Henry, he is a bit game script dependent, but should be a pretty close game here versus the Indianapolis Colts, in which should be a pretty soft matchup. So if he can find the end zone, he'll be happy with Henry. And the price point doesn't seem too bad. David Montgomery, $6,600. This is probably one of my favorite running back plays of the entire week. And no, I am not just chasing points from the Green Bay Packers game. It's just another positive game script, and he is their team's RB1, and they're going to feed him the rock. And we're talking about a Thursday game where he was questionable coming in. He was dealing with that injury, and they get the ball over 30 times. So obviously they're not too concerned about a workload for him in the slightest. So another game here that projects to have a positive game script for Montgomery, with them leading with a 27-point implied team total, playing at home, 8.5-point favorites versus a not-so-great defense. I'll take Monty all day at $6,600. Should probably be around 7K, to be honest. Alvin Kamara at $6,300. Not really loving the spot versus New England, but what I do love is what I saw last week. Now, I doubt this ever happens again, but this is a one-game sample size. But he had 14 targets, 13 catches for only like 33 yards. That equates to a 36% target share in the only game he has played this year. Is that sustainable? No, probably not. But the floor is super high. He's obviously a very talented running back, and he's like $6,000. So if you're just looking for a high floor on a PPR slate like DraftKings, makes a lot of sense. Not as good of a play over on FanDuel, but still decent enough. Raheem Mostert and then Devon Achane. He's a beast. I don't know. Either way, he's absolutely awesome when he's on the field. Now, the volume wasn't great last week. They were getting blown out, but he still had 2 touchdowns. And in a very, very small sample size, he has been so efficient, 11.4 yards per carry, which obviously is not sustainable. So keep that in mind. He's not going to get you 103 yards rushing on 9 carries like his average says every single week, but the talent is there. Both these guys should pretty much see a split backfield. Mostert did fumble a couple of times last week, I believe, so something to look out for, but obviously we know both these running backs can have success in this offense, and they're going to be on the goal line. I mean, they're going to be in scoring position quite a bit, so touchdown upside is always going to be there. So I would definitely be having exposure, and especially in non-Tua lineups. I mean, you think you almost just have to have exposure to the run game here because Miami's going to put up points, and if you don't have the passing attack, you're going to miss out on something. And as you can see, both are a little bit involved in the passing game. We have Mostert with an 11% target share, and then the rookie with the 10.3% target share. So even if you are playing the passing attack, even rostering one of them with Tua is fine. DeAndre Swift, if you're just looking for the RB1 in Philly, you want to stack this game up and you don't have the passing attack, Swift makes sense here. He also has been very efficient, over 6 yards per carry this season and seeing close to 15 carries a week. Bit of a crowded backfield, but Swift has pretty much established himself as the RB1 in that offense. Then Isaiah Pacheco, in similar fashion when I talked about the Dolphins, where if you don't have the passing attack, it makes sense to play the running backs. If you don't have the passing attack for the Chiefs, a lot of points are going to be scored here. You probably should play Pacheco, and we saw that on Sunday night where Mahomes didn't really have the greatest game, but the Chiefs are going to score points, and the majority of that happened to come from Pacheco. So if that happened to happen again, like I said that a lot, I would play Pacheco there in that situation. So moving back over to our build here, like I said, David Montgomery, I'm assuming going to project very well for me at $6,600. So let's just plug him in here. Get exposure to that Detroit offense, and it's just a perfect game script. Not saying he's going to get 3 touchdowns again, over 30 fantasy points, but I would say getting 60 plus rushing yards and a touchdown is probably a fairly safe projection for him with upside of more. And instead of going with the Dolphins running back, I think they're both excellent plays and they're going to have a bit of ownership this week. Since we are not going with the Chiefs stack just for the sake of making sense for this build, let's roll out Isaiah Pacheco here at $5,700. That still leaves us $5,000 per player. And as you can see, Tyreek Hill, $9,000, Jalen Waddle, $7,500. So it's going to eat up a good chunk of salary. So we don't really have the money to afford an expensive running back. And then moving on to wide receiver, don't be intimidated by the long list here. It just depends on what kind of quarterback you are rolling with or the game stacks you're looking at, and it's going to put you in a direction where you pretty much only have a select group of players to pick from. Obviously, you can't stack your entire lineup up, and if you're playing cash games, one-offs are completely fine, but we're talking in general for tournaments. So for this specific build, we went with Tua, so that means we need to look at Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and we got to find a run back option from the Giants, which obviously is not that pretty. If you went with Kirk Cousins, Jefferson, and then you find a run back from KC, which you probably don't want a KC wide receiver, but then you're kind of forced with a Travis Kelce at that point. But, I mean, the two big dogs, Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, every single week they're going to be up as the top two. It just depends on the quarterback you're going with because you probably can't afford Hill and Jefferson in the same lineup. A.J. Brown, if you were rostering, Jalen Hurts, that's probably the only way I'm getting there, A.J. Brown, or if I had Matthew Stafford as a run back option there. Puka's at $7,700. He is part of that game stack as well. But if Cooper Kupp is back, I'm assuming they're not going to bring him back unless he can play his significant role. So if he does happen to play, Puka at nearly $8,000 is going to be a tough pill to swallow there. So I'd probably have to say bye to our sweet prince. But he's been absolutely amazing. Shout out to Puka. Absolutely love him. Have him in my home league and feels good. Jamar Chase, if T. Higgins is out, while the Bengals have looked atrocious, it's a good spot versus Arizona, and he's going to be forced into like 15 targets in this game. So if T. Higgins happens to be out with the rib issue, I mean, Jamar's tough not to like at $7,900. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't really have too much interest in Jared Goff's stacks. I really just like the run game here with David Montgomery, but if you are wanting a piece of the passing attack, obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be your preferred option. Jameson Williams is back this week, but is he going to get a full allotment of snaps? I would say probably not. Jalen Waddle we talked about, Devontae Smith's part of the stacks there. Garrett Wilson's fine as a one-off. I know Zach Wilson looked great last week. You can't expect that every single time, but facing Denver, who has a middle school defense, I mean, they let Justin Fields look good, and that's pretty hard to do. So if they can do that, I feel like Zach Wilson can have some success. And you were getting one of the more talented wide receivers in the entire league. You had 14 targets versus the Kansas City Chiefs at $6,000. I don't mind it, although I'm not looking to stack that game up, but he's fine as a one-off. Hopkins fine as a one-off, just easy matchup versus Indy, but I just hate the Titans offense. Tutu's part of the game stack there. Jordan Addison part of a game stack. Marquise Brown's fine as a one-off, or if you just kind of want to have a little bit of correlation with Jamar Chase and Marquise Brown, you could do a small stack there without playing the quarterbacks, because obviously you don't really want to play Joe Burrow these days. And then Josh Dobbs, like, he's competent enough. I wish the Browns still had him after watching DTR play football last week, or I'm not sure if you want to call that playing football. It just wasn't pretty. But Brown's numbers are honestly not terrible this year. We're talking 8 targets per game, 41% market share of the team's air yards, 70% weight opportunity share, just under a 30% target share. At 5K, not too bad. Tank Dell is always going to be in play unless he gets to the 6K range, but the talent's there. Him and Nico, I know Nico's not on the list here, but I mean, both are playable every single week with how good CJ Stroud in general just really looks. I mean, especially as a rookie, he's only going to get better, at least I hope. So, well, not that he has to get better. I mean, he's obviously playing fantastic, but I think you know what I mean. And Wan'Dale Robinson, he makes those expensive Miami stacks just work really well. And we're not even really getting too gross here at $3,000. I just think this is a bit of a mispricing. But we know Miami can give up points to the wide receiver position. Now, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis are nowhere by any means close to Daniel Jones and Wan'Dale Robinson. But Miami can give up points to the position. As you can see, they are currently 23rd versus receivers this year, allowing nearly 200 receiving yards per game specifically to wide receivers. Now, obviously, it might be a bit skewed from last week. But we're talking about a guy at $3,000. So the bare minimum, 5.5 targets per game, 15.5% target share, 30 yards per game on just under 5 catches. I would take that all day at $3,000 just as part of a stack. And it's going to make playing Tyreek Hill feel a heck of a lot better. So only playing him in GPPs, I guess in cash games, if you need an absolute punt, he makes sense because this is going to be a good game script. They're going to be trailing. It's a high total. So I actually don't hate it. All right, so moving over to our build here, we're actually just going to fill out the 3 remaining wide receiver spots that we have, which I usually try to keep the 1 spot open. But honestly, I'm just going to double stack with Tua here because if I don't have the running backs, I just need to go all in on the passing attack. So we'll throw in Tyreek Hill here at $9,000. We'll throw in Jalen Waddle at $7,500. And I realize that just ate a ton of our salary. But like I said, we do have Wan'Dale Robinson here as a run back option. So we're not just even forcing a cheap play. He actually also makes sense for this build here at $3,000. That opens it up back a little bit. And keep in mind, 2 of our remaining 3 spots here, while 1 is a flex, tight end, who we can usually always go cheap with, and then defense, who we could also probably find below $3,000. So I'm going to assume our flex spot could probably be around $5,000, which honestly would look pretty good. And now we got tight ends and defenses here. For the tight ends, I would just try to follow like your lineup construction. So pair them up with a quarterback, and if you're not doing that, if it's not part of your game stack, just throw no Everfist, to be honest, because all these guys suck outside of a couple. So Kelsey, Hawkinson, both in the same game here, just so it depends on either what quarterback you're going with or just the game stack in general, but I like both, obviously. Darren Waller, if you don't want to go the Wan'Dale Robinson route, I wouldn't double stack with the Giants, but Waller is a viable run back option. But man, he has been a massive, massive disappointment in that offense so far. Not sure if it's really his fault or not, but I mean, he's just not getting the ball. Sam Laporta, $5,000. Dude's a stud. He's legit. And if you are going with the Goff stack, I mean, Laporta and Sam Brown are going to be your 2 main options there. But he's also fine as a one-off for cash games too. I mean, he's going to be very consistent all season long. Tyler Higbee, just part of that Rams stack, although if Cooper Kupp is back, I mean, it just kind of negates targets from everybody else in the offense, not named Cooper Kupp. And then Zach Ertz, $3,500. I like him and Marquise Brown a bit in this offense. They're just going to get targets. He's seeing over 7 targets per game. $3,500 for a former really talented tight end. Like, he doesn't suck now, but obviously he's getting older. But I don't mind it. He's cheap, playing at home, and 3-point dog. And then as for defense, I say it every single time, but the first thing I do is, because I don't spend up at the position, I scroll all the way down and look for the first viable defense that has a low implied team total against them. So we have the Titans here at $2,400 versus Indy on the road. I don't hate that. Only a 22-point implied team total there. I think that's fine. Anthony Richardson, I'm sure, can cause a couple of turnovers. Steelers defense, lowest total of the week here at 38.5, 21.5 total. They are underdogs versus Lamar, but I mean, I'm not going to get too picky here at $2,700. The Saints defense versus the Patriots at 3K, 21-point implied team total. We also have the Patriots versus the Saints as well, 19.5 total. So just an early look there, just looking at the numbers. I mean, Titans defense, Steelers, Patriots, and the Saints don't look too bad at the respective price points. All right, so moving over to our lineup, we got to finish this off here. We have 3 spots left and only $11,100 to do it, but shouldn't be too hard here with the remaining types of players that we have. So let's plug in the cheapest defense possible. We'll go with the Tennessee Titans there. Move on to tight end. Let's find a cheap one. I like Zach Ertz. Just trying to stick with players we talked about. So $3,500 for a tight end that has seen at least 8 targets in 3 out of 4 weeks and 10 targets in 2 weeks. I'll take it at $3,500. So it leaves us just over $5,000 left for the flex spot, which off the top of my head, I don't really remember anybody around there, but I know there's got to be a few. We have George Pickens, Adam Thielen, Marquise Brown we did talk about. Not really sure I want to double up on Arizona Cardinals players, but I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. But we do have Tank Dell here, $4,800. It was a Nico Collins week last week, so maybe that flips around. Ends up being a Nico week this weekend at Atlanta. Probably going to be throwing the ball like they always do, and C.J. Stroud has looked really good. So I am fine with that. We have $400 left, so if you want to upgrade the defense a little bit, you don't want to roll the Titans out there. We could play the Steelers here at $2,700, but that's just up to personal preference. Don't play this lineup, guys, though. It's Tuesday, lock and change, and no copy and paste lineups you see on YouTube. But the roster construction overall for this does look pretty solid. So we have a double stack with Tua, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, a ram back with Wan'Dale Robinson. We have David Montgomery, just getting a piece of that Detroit offense, but perfect game script. Isaiah Pacheco, we have 0 Chiefs wide receivers or tight ends or any of the passing attack. So I want to get exposure to it somehow. So we're going to play Pacheco and hope he gets the touchdowns. Then we have Zach Ertz because he's cheap and he fits. Tank Dell, fit at the end, and then the defense, I don't care. But with that being said, guys, all I got for today's video. So I hope you did enjoy. And if you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. I'm more than happy to get back to you. But I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.